The Music is Life podcast has our own merch now over on tpublic.com. Click the link below in the video description. Looking for some new threads? We got t-shirts, long sleeves, hoodies, crew neck sweatshirts, tank tops, baseball tees, and also clothes for kids and onesies for your little infant metalheads. Don't want clothes but love the Java? We got you covered with coffee mugs and travel mugs. Need protection for your electronics? We've also got phone and laptop cases. We've got everything you're looking for at the tpublic.com Music is Life podcast store. Use my link below for fast service. Thanks for your support. TerraNut is proud to offer you a natural nut bar chock full of healthy fats, minerals, and protein that meet your demands. Go to their website, www.terranut.com. You can order from them directly and they will ship it to you. Use my coupon code LOUMAVS and you will get a 25% discount on your first order. TerraNut Superfood Snacks, www.terranut.com. Don't forget to use coupon code LOUMAVS at checkout. Fuel your life.
Looking for some new podcasts to listen to? Well, look no further than the Ratsaw Review Network. Ratsaw Review is taking over the podcast world with plenty of shows to choose from within their network of entertaining programming, including the flagship show, Ratsaw Review, with Wayne Noon, Greg Noggle, and Lou Mavs, as well as occasional co-hosts Manny Mejias and James Lilquist. We also have the official Ratsaw Review spin-offs, such as Album vs. Album, Screams from the Grave, where we discuss beloved yet forgotten hard rock and metal albums of the past, and a King Diamond podcast called This Broadcast Belongs to Them. We've also got Old Man Metal's Musings, the Metal Thrashing Nerd podcast with Metal Thrashing Mike, the Timo Tolkki podcast featuring Stradivarius and Avalon founding member Timo Tolkki, the BS Sessions with Mark and Jerry, Just the Cheese Please, a podcast dedicated to cheesy films of the 1980s with Tara J. and Adam, and the Music is Live podcast with Lou Mavs. The Ratsaw Review Network is your go-to one-stop shop for the best podcasts out there today. Go to ratsawreview.com for more info. And to find out where you can find, follow, subscribe, and comment on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and all streaming platforms. The Ratsaw Review Network. We're taking over.
Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day. Thanks for watching Music is Live podcast on my channel or on the Ratsaw Review channel. Couple of questions I've been asked. The primary one being, where the hell have you been? I realize it's been a very long time since my last original episode. I did do the episode with Brian Tatler of Diamond Head, but that was specifically for Ratsaw Review that I thought people who subscribe to my channel would like to watch. So what have I been doing for the past couple of months? Well, a couple of things. Number one, my dog, Wishes, was unfortunately diagnosed with anal gland carcinoma. Thankfully, it was detected early because 2 weeks prior, he had his physical where our vet, Dr. Alexis Baffa, who is an amazing vet, said that he was fine. Everything checked out. People need to remember that the life of 1 human year is equivalent to 7 in dogs. So with dogs, things are just much more rapid. So they were able to remove the tumor, as well as both anal glands, one that had the tumor on it, and the other one for preventative measures, along with 1.3 millimeters of tissue around it. He wasn't technically cancer-free because there is always residual that happens around there. So he is currently undergoing chemotherapy. The option that they gave us was radiation or chemotherapy. If we chose radiation, there was only 3 places that we could take him. One was in Yonkers, one was in Manhattan, and one was in New Jersey. However, it had to be daily for 3 weeks straight. We just didn't have the resources to do that. I work full-time, my wife works full-time, and we have a 4-year-old daughter. So the other option was chemotherapy, which Long Island veterinary specialists said that with 6 rounds of chemotherapy, every 4 weeks, they'll test his blood to make sure that it's doing great. He had his 2nd round of chemo just fairly recently, a little over a week ago, and his blood work has been fine. And this is him right now. He's doing so much better. He's got his disposition back. And at this point, that's really all I care about. They say statistically that with this kind of cancer, when detected at an early stage, dogs can live an average of 9 to 12 months longer. However, odds have proven that they sometimes do live much longer than that. So, let's hope that I get more years out of him. Or at least just quality of life with him, which so far has been great. So that was the unfortunate thing, but the best news is I'm back to writing and recording original music. I actually just had a song released with Doc Reinhardt called I'll Turn the Light Out For You, which I'm very proud of. Just finished recording a song with my buddy Matt Micolo of Micolo Beats, who's going to be on a later episode. And I'm back to writing and recording music with Wayne Noon of Ratza Review, Alex Rapetti of Infinite Spectrum and Tension Rising, George Dimitri of Timeless Haunt, and Mark Muchnick of the Nightmare Stage. We're called Severed Angel. We have a couple of singles out already, including our cover of Ghost Square Hammer, and our original songs by the time of this recording, which are A Fate Worse Than Death and Run and Hide. Very proud of the work we've done. We've actually just wrote and recorded and finished an album in 3 months, and I'm looking forward to releasing that. So that's what's been going on. Sorry I haven't been putting out as much content as I like, but family takes priority. Anyways, my apologies to all my guests. Thanks, bud. My apologies to all my guests. Professor William Irwin, the gentleman over at Moneybag Sodas, and also to Signal to Noise, and to Michael Brandvold. He was the gentleman that was kind enough to get Signal to Noise and Moneybag Soda's episodes done. That's what's been going on, but thanks for your patience. Hope you like these string of episodes that I'm going to be releasing. And remember, all art is valid. Right, Wishy? Right. Cheers.
We are ready and waiting for you now. If it's a fight that you deceive, we've acquired our strength through pain. No more are we pathetic game. You are the reason why we claim that we've all become this way. And I regret this prison that I've created for myself. Who can it be? Who makes us cry? Won't save us from ourselves. I close my eyes and then I pray that revenge can be as sweet as it sounds. We are the rebels that force from your hate as you play out. Someone want to fight with you, to argue to, or make the love yell. My heart still beats, my eyes still cry, and I can't forgive you for this.
Music is Live Podcast. This is your host, Lou Mavs. Check out everything you need to know about the show over at musicislivepodcast.com. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a huge fan of the band Metallica, but I don't really talk about Metallica because everyone knows who they are. I was hesitant for fear of providing overexposure to them, and besides, they don't need my help. However, that doesn't mean I don't have any issue with promoting someone who releases something Metallica related. In this case, my guest today is a professor of philosophy at King's College in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, who is considered the originator of the philosophy and popular culture book genre, with books on Seinfeld and The Simpsons, and many points in between. He has released a book called The Meaning of Metallica, Ride the Lyrics through ECW Press, which is based on the lyrics of James Hetfield. And we're here today to talk about his work. I'm proud to have on the podcast today as my guest, Professor William Irwin.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Lou. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you, and please call me Bill.
Will do. All right, Bill, thank you. First time I think I've ever been allowed to call a professor by their first name. Take that, St. John's University.
Right.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great, yeah. June in Pennsylvania, where I am, is beautiful.
Awesome. I'll actually be visiting Pennsylvania this summer. My daughter wants to go to Dutch Wonderland again, so we'll probably take a vacation out there.
Yeah, I was there with my kids when they were young. They're 18 and 16 now. we might even go back just to hit the
Waffle
buffets
House.
Yeah, and the Waffle House is awesome too. Yeah, right.
Very cool. You've already been interviewed by Wayne Noon, my partner over at Rat Salad Review.
Rat Salad and Wayne and Manny was on the podcast as well that day.
Yeah, Manny was actually the one who recommended your book.
Cool.
We had a kick out of it. Wayne mentioned to me that you were interested in talking with other podcasts, and he brought the opportunity to me. And the point of the show, Music is Life, is to talk about music, its impact on people, how much we enjoy it, and just all facets of it. I've had people from various parts of within and without of the industry, whether they're people in fashion or people in photography. You're actually my first professor, so that's pretty cool.
All right, cool. And I was listening to the episode in defense of Peter Steele, which I thought was a lot of fun.
Someone listens to my show. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, it was great. I lost track of things with what was going on in that world after his death, and I didn't even realize that there was Carnivore AD. Is that the name of the band now?
Carnivore AD is the tribute band that my friend Baron Mizuraka is the vocalist and bassist for. Basically, playing the music of Carnivore, which was Pete's band before Typo Negative, to the masses pretty much. And it's been getting a great response. There's been a demand for Pete's music, especially in Europe. And they actually just played a summer metal concert series in upstate New York alongside Exodus and Voivod of all bands. So
very cool.
Really happy for Baron. And, there was always the misconception that Pete was, misogynist or male chauvinist or racist, and he wasn't any of those things, so.
No, I thought you did a great job with Baron of clearing that kind of stuff up. It was really good to hear.
Thank you. I mean, I've read articles and interviews with Pete in the past before, but the problem is it's like, and you as a professor, you've experienced this where, sometimes people are so engulfed in what they've been told to believe or kind of what they've been spoon-fed that sometimes if something breaks their narrative, it's hard for them to take. So they just deny it. Cognitive dissonance, I guess you can call it.
That's right. It's very hard for people to break out or to have that narrative. That's a story. And if the details don't fit the story, well, they're not going to accept the details.
Well, I'm glad that I could add to the narrative in defense of Peter Steele, hence the name of the episode. So, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. So I'll proceed with you. My love for the band Metallica. I was 7 years old when I first heard Master of Puppets. Both of my brothers, who were older than me by 12 to 15 years, were huge fans of the band. My eldest brother had Master of Puppets on cassette. My older brother had, at the time, it was just Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All. So they were one of his favorite bands. So mind you, this is before the Black Album. At first, I loved Metallica because it was fast, loud, hard, and exciting. But I have to admit, it wasn't until I was about 11 or 12 years old when I first heard Dyer's Eve. By the time I was kind of old enough to understand what he was saying, what the lyrics were about, I really engulfed myself in what he was singing. Not to say that I came from a troubled home, but to hear what he was singing about and for it to like just smack you in the face, like it make that kind of impact. I'm sure a lot of people from my generation and younger can even relate to the lyrical content, especially with a song like Dyer's Eve. What was it about Metallica that drew your interest to write a book about them?
Yeah, well, I've been almost a lifelong fan. I'm a bit older than you. I'm 52. And so
you look great.
Yeah, right. My first contact with the band or exposure was 1984. Ride the Lightning was a relatively new album, and my buddy Joe, Beavis to my Butthead or Butthead to my Beavis or whatever, had a copy of the album. And as we did back in the day, he made a cassette tape of it for me. And, like you say, it's not only harder and faster and heavier than anything else that was going on that I was aware of at that time, but it was also deeper. And aside from being a kind of, aspiring Beavis or Butthead before there were such people or characters, I also had my sort of emo tendencies and intellectual or pseudo-intellectual tendencies. And so the first song to really speak to me was Fade to Black, which really spoke, listeners will probably know it's a song about suicide, and it really spoke to my feelings of angst and alienation and despair and all that kind of thing. And right from the beginning, like so many other listeners and fans, I found that to be a song of hope rather than one that was encouraging to indulge the negative or to go all the way to the reaction of self-harm. So that's where it came in for me.
That's a pretty detailed answer. And yeah, I guess in terms of timeline, when I was old enough to understand the lyrics, Fade to Black, it wasn't until the death of, I should say the suicide of Kurt Cobain, where it's like when I kind of put idea to thought. And I remember when his note was read on MTV. And it's funny because I remember this because it was so cryptic. Right after that, I turned the radio on, and Q104.3, which is at the time was a hard rock station in New York, was playing Fade to Black. And it was just like, wow, that's creepy, and like kind of listening to it and thinking about what just transpired. And the thing about Metallica that I love the most, aside from the music, is really the lyrics, because finally I felt like metal fans had a band that they could relate to lyrically on an emotional level. It's like all the stuff that James went through growing up, between losing his mother because, he was raised Christian Science and she needed a blood transfusion. And he was told that, the body is a temple and it'll, and this is not an anti-religion thing that I'm talking about. I'm just saying this is what happened to him at the time, and for him to put pen to paper and like just unleash his pain in a positive way and just inspire a bunch of kids to either pick up a guitar or find hope within their music. I think it's a testament, not just to him, but to the band in general, for being able to make the kids relate to something like that. I mean, for me, I think Metallica is the one metal band since Black Sabbath where people could really relate to on a personal level, because their music, the lyrics, it all meant something.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And it's funny the way that it works, right? And you even talked about listening to them, and at first you're really tuned into the music. And for some people, the instrumentation and the heavy music is fine, right? That's all that they need. But it's something that can be listened to and appreciated on different levels, sometimes at different points in life. And the lyrics are as intricate as the down picking and the riffing and everything else. They really have been honed and crafted in most cases, right? And aside from the sort of angry tone of the music and some of the lyrics, which is all some people hear, particularly if they're not big fans of the band or the metal genre, there really is a great deal of vulnerability that Hetfield expresses lyrically, and as well as musically and instrumentally. And Fade to Black, of course, was a song that he didn't write out of a feeling of suicidal despair himself. The story behind it goes that some gear had been stolen, and it was kind of a real emotional low point. And what he did was use that kind of down emotion to tap into the feeling of what it would be like to be in the mindset of a suicidal person. And this is what great artists do, whether they're poets, lyric writers, actors, they tap into it and they create their art from it. And the song has just always been very important to me. And it was very good to see, actually, just in a recent concert back in Boston a couple of weeks ago, that in bringing the song out for the concert audience, Hetfield talked about struggling, and he wasn't necessarily, I don't think, talking about struggling with suicide himself, although who knows. But he talked about how he struggles every day. I mean, part of his struggle, of course, is with addiction and with reining in anger and emotional issues, that sort of thing. And this was something I haven't seen him do before in the past. Talk to the audience about his own struggle and vulnerability, and encourage them that if they identified with what he was saying in the song and there from the stage, to talk. All right, talk to friends, talk to him, talk to anyone, and don't live with it all on your own. So I just thought that was great. And it's something, although that was an important message in the song and the music from back in 1984, it shows something of his own personal development and almost a sense of responsibility to fans, that he was willing to be vulnerable and speaking that way off the cuff and not just through the lyrics.
I've always appreciated that about him, because for me, as a fan, it brings me a lot of hope. So
yeah, and just not an easy thing for him to do. He's not a kind of naturally charismatic guy the way that like David Lee Roth is.
I want to take this time to say that this is real whiskey here. The only people who put iced tea in Jack Daniels bottles is the Clash, baby!
You know, love him or hate him, you know what I mean?
That's charisma on a whole different level. And I love Van Halen.
Yeah, it's a different kind of, I mean, there is a charisma to Hetfield, but it's more like the strong, silent type, the Clint Eastwood type charisma, right? And there are a lot of things that he wasn't sort of, desiring to do or naturally meant to do that he's done, right? He didn't really want to be a singer, would have been, happier just playing rhythm guitar, but, it fell to him to do the singing, and he really has cultivated an impressive singing ability, unique phrasing, and a very distinctive voice.
Yeah. I don't sound like that, do I? Oh yeah! Oh yeah! I guess I do.
Sorry, I had to throw that out there.
Right? And more on point for what we were just saying, he was not a natural frontman in any kind of way, but at first was standing kind of back to the audience. And when Dave was in the band, letting Mustaine do a lot of the talking, but he's really, really cultivated those abilities. And I think hand in hand with that is probably lyric writing, is something that he didn't necessarily need or want to do back as a 19 or 20-year-old, but it fell to him to do it, and he's taken it, very seriously. And while he's a more naturally talented guitar player than lyric writer, I think he's worked as hard or harder when it comes to shaping the lyrics, rather than just do something half-assed and leave well enough alone.
Two things. One, I do know that at one point they wanted John Bush of Armored Saint to be the front man. He ended up being the singer of Anthrax in 93. I'm a huge Armored Saint fan, and I would have loved to have heard Metallica with John Bush on vocals. So I'm glad that at their 30th anniversary concerts, he came out and did Four Horsemen with them. I mean, he just killed it.
One last man, always blow, better raise your ears. The sound of us not get go.
Probably my favorite version of that song I ever heard, and that's not taking anything away from James Hetfield. Two, we were talking about Fade to Black before. My biggest regret, I never got to see them play it live. I was at the S&M show in 99 at Madison Square Garden, where they played with the St. Luke Orchestra with Michael Kamen conducting. Rest in peace, Michael Kamen. And I knew that they were going to perform, all the songs from the live album. I just wish that they had done Fade to Black. They didn't.
Yeah,
I was so shocked. That would have been great with the symphony orchestra.
Would have lent itself well to orchestration. Yeah.
I mean, it in itself is a classical piece with distorted guitars. It really is.
Yeah.
But I mean, Metallica's got so many great songs to choose from. They can't play everything. It's completely understandable. And I realized that the casual fan knows the Black Album. So, of course, a lot of the material in their live shows have to come from that. And that's okay. We have the music that they released prior to that. We could put that on whenever we want. And Metallica's, one thing I love about them is the fact that they actually post on their YouTube channel a bunch of videos of, you know, not just their popular songs, but even their rare songs that the Met Club films.
Right.
You know, they really are people's band.
That's right. And then Fade to Black is back in the set list. They've been playing it, and people should check out the Boston recording that has him speaking about his struggle from the stage. That really is, I think, pretty moving.
Definitely.
Hey, Boston. Do you feel the struggle? I feel the struggle every day. And if you identify with that, you're not alone. Talk to your friends, all right? Really. Talk to your friends, your family, whoever. Talk to me right now.
So about you as an author, you know, social commentary on pop culture, it's not a new thing. Growing up in the 80s, I remember watching the television and seeing the PMRC trials, which is what led to the recording industry putting parental advisory stickers on albums. I remember the Bible Belt burning metal records. I remember people accusing Kiss of Satanism when all their songs were about getting laid, people. There was nothing satanic about it. I could keep going, but you've made part of your career on interpreting elements of pop culture and breaking it down to the most common denominator on its resonance with people across all cultures. Definitely something that was never really tapped into until you touched on it. What would you say was the impetus for you writing your books on capturing the philosophy of so many fandoms, from Metallica to Star Wars to Harry Potter to South Park?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I teach at a small college in Pennsylvania, and we have required philosophy classes. So I have a lot of captive audience members. Back in the late 90s, when I first started teaching there, Seinfeld was just the biggest show on television. And, you know, it was the days before pop culture was so dispersed that, you know, there were all these little silos of fandoms. Back then, Seinfeld, and then likewise The Simpsons shortly thereafter in particular, were just known by everyone. So basically what I was trying to do is bridge the gap between philosophy, which is sort of an odd and foreign subject for most people entering college. They've not had it in high school. American culture doesn't put a lot of emphasis on it. So I would just try to find common ground in a Seinfeld episode or character and bring it into class. And so when the show was going off the air, what was that, 90, 98, 99, that was kind of a bad moment for me, because where am I going to get my material from for class anymore? And it turned out I wasn't the only one who was doing that. I had friends who were also generally younger philosophy professors who were making these connections. And so Seinfeld and Philosophy, which was the first book of this kind, is a collection of essays into chapter form by various philosophy professors, making some connection between Seinfeld and philosophy. And that worked out very well, both critically and commercially. And so, as you alluded to, it sort of gave birth to a whole series of books, The Simpsons in Philosophy, The Matrix in Philosophy, Star Wars and Philosophy, Harry Potter and Philosophy. We keep going. I did a Metallica and Philosophy at one point, and that was likewise an edited collection with a whole bunch of contributing authors. This new book, though, that we're referencing in particular today, The Meaning of Metallica, is the first book that focuses just singly on the lyrics of Metallica, and this one I'm the sole author behind. But it just seems to me there's lots of intelligent things going on in lots of pop culture, be it song lyrics, movies, television shows. It's worth paying attention to. And lots of times the fandoms are aware of and really value what's going on in terms of the ideas and the intellectual content in whatever they are, songs, video games, movies, television shows, etc.
I also want to put over the fact that you've written books on socioeconomic political themes, as well as religion, including God is a Question, Not an Answer, Finding Common Ground in Our Uncertainty, and The Free Market Existentialist, Capitalism Without Consumerism. Now, I haven't read those books, but those are two topics that I have interest in my personal life. But I never discuss those topics on the podcast because for two reasons. Number one, I don't think it's my role in life because this is a music podcast, so I try to keep it separate. Also, I don't want to add to the culture war. I'm perfectly happy with my state as a podcast host, but I'm intrigued in reading them. With things today being as they are, and this is probably the first time I'll ever ask a question like this and the last time, but with things today being as they are, from arguments over political ideology, clashes over what capitalism is as opposed to what people claim it is, Supreme Court decisions that have people in an uproar, and the idea of faith versus religion because there is a difference. Has it led more room for you to want to write more about the subject and go deeper into these studies, or, have more discussions with even more subject matter experts?
Yeah, right. So thanks for the reference to those books as well. I have
I dig deep.
A couple of different hats that I wear. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your avoiding the minefields of religion and politics and keeping the focus on music with your podcast. But I mean, these are subjects that everybody cares about in one way or another. But the problem tends to be that we kind of silo ourselves in with one point of view or another and look for narratives that support it. And so part of my role as a philosophy professor, like you as the podcast host, I don't broadcast my own political or religious views, even though they are connected to philosophy when I'm teaching. I see my job as a teacher in the classroom is trying to teach how to think rather than what to think, and in some way playing the role of therapist with the class in the sense of getting them to think and discover for themselves what they think and to have good reasons behind it. So that this certainly is the kind of subject area that I'm drawn to, and I try in my writings as well as in discussions to be a kind of a calm and rational voice, trying to find room for common agreement between sides, like the book that you mentioned, that the God is a Question book, is basically trying to highlight room for uncertainty on either side of the issues relating to the existence of God, and find common ground, as the subtitle mentions.
I like it when people are more open to finding things out rather than dictating to you, no, this never happened. For example, I just recently took my daughter to a dinosaur exhibit. And she thought the dinosaurs were real because they were moving, but she didn't realize they were animatronics. But to be able to open that up to her so she could see that, no, these actually existed at one point. I mean, to see the sense of wonder in her eyes was really cool. And, I think it's good to ask questions. I think it's good to have wonderment about things because it leaves you open to kind of expanding your own thing. And I don't mean using hallucinogenics to get there, people. I'm just saying, do some research, look it up for yourself. Read a book. Read one of Professor William Irwin's books. Oh, yeah! Shameless plug.
Yeah, that's it. So, I mean, I agree that it's been said that philosophy begins in wonder. And I love the story of your daughter, right? I mean, if we can keep those childlike views and open eyes, we're much better off, in a sense of humility in recognizing that we may have degrees of confidence in beliefs, but we need to be open to revision and the possibility of being wrong, and just find some wonder in the wide world, and doing some digging into our history and into our culture.
It's definitely enlightening talking to a child and seeing their wonderment about the world, as opposed to dealing with a cynical adult who's already made up their mind and just such a downer,
Yeah.
I've learned that from being a father. Are there any parts of pop culture that you haven't touched yet with your books that you'd eventually like to, or are there any parts that you'd like to revisit, especially now with Star Wars being so reinvigorated with the series, all the different series from The Mandalorian, which, by the way, tie in a Mandalorian t-shirt in the font of Ride the Lightning.
Yeah. So we actually, so in this book series, I'm not the editor of every single book, play the role of series editor for the whole series, which is a little bit of inside baseball. But just to forecast a little bit of what's coming, you mentioned The Mandalorian and Star Wars. We have a new Star Wars and Philosophy book that's coming out that will deal not only with the three trilogies, but also expanded universe things, including The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and all that kind of jazz. And so that there's a continual supply, and Star Wars is a great one because the fandom is so huge. You ask about things that I'd like to see covered. We haven't done as much with video games as I would like the series to do. Partly, I guess I'm to blame because I'm old and not really a gamer. But
he looks younger than me, people. I don't know what he's talking about.
I don't know about that, Lou. You're very kind. But I think some of the difficulty with video games is finding the one that will work so that there's a big enough audience that they're interested in a book on philosophy tying together with that video game. It's not like Pac-Man Fever back when I was a kid, where there's this one video game that's dominating, right? I mean,
and one song that dominated the charts at the same time too. Forget about that.
'Cause I got Pac-Man fever. Pac-Man fever. It's driving me crazy. Driving me crazy. I got Pac-Man fever.
Yeah, right. But my impression with video games is that, so many of them require such an investment of time and energy. One franchise that we're looking at doing is The Witcher, because not only is that a video game franchise, but a series of novels and television shows, so that you can tap into lots of different things.
I'm actually a fan of Michael Moorcock, especially the Eric of Melnib, however it's pronounced, Elric, the albino owner of Stormbringer, the Black Blade. A lot of people draw parallels between The Witcher and Elric. Have you noticed any, you think?
Oh, I'm not well enough informed to give a great opinion there, but it does seem sort of set up to make that comparison.
All right, I'll start watching The Witcher. You start reading Elric. We're good.
All right.
Sounds good. I'm not really a gamer myself. I actually stopped playing video games when I started going for my master's degree, but I've always loved Legend of Zelda. So that's probably like the one video game series that I've followed religiously. That would be cool to actually see somebody write a novel on that, and like the philosophies behind it, or why does it seem to be retelling the different stories at different points in time, and is it Link, is it a different Link, is it a different universe? I mean, I think that would be cool, something cool to expand to, but I just think people with Zelda, they're just happy to play the games, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's a matter of finding the right audience, as all things are. But Zelda right, Zelda, I think, is continuing too, right? Is there a new iteration of it?
Oh, I haven't bought a Nintendo system since the Wii. Yeah. So now being a full-time dad and a full-time worker, there's no video games.
I know, you have to cut something out, right?
Pretty much.
Oh, woe to me.
What would you say was the greatest finding about your digging into the lyrics of Metallica? And what would you say it says about James Hetfield, or even Metallica fans? What would you say it says about them?
Well, I mentioned before the vulnerability, which didn't surprise me. Just in terms of actual surprise and talking about vulnerability, I mean, Metallica is certainly not known for their love songs, right? You think of Something Else Matters, Nothing Else Matters.
Boo! I could do without that one. I've heard it so many times.
I know, right? I mean, real listener fatigue there, right? But in the book, I look as sort of companion to Nothing Else Matters, the Unforgiven 2, which is also a kind of a love song, although a much darker one, right? Where it's the narrator falling in love and finding sort of shelter from the storm with this ally, right? This woman that he loves. And I had listened to the song many, many times. It's hard to even guesstimate these things, hundreds of times, I'm sure. But until I sat down to really analyze it for the book, I hadn't realized that the narrator ends up killing the woman. And it looks like, if I read the lyrics correctly, it's as a result of a betrayal, right? Probably romantic infidelity, and I'll just read from the lyrics in case you're curious or people are curious, right? These are the lines that really struck me. The lyrics run, "Come beside me, this won't hurt, I swear. She loves me not, she loves me still, but she'll never love again." Right? "She lay beside me, but she'll be there when I'm gone. Black heart scarring darker still. Yes, she'll be there when I'm gone. Yes, she'll be there when I'm gone. Dead sure she'll be there." Right? And then a little later it says, "How can I," a little bit later, it says, wait, let me find that line. Yeah. "And I take this key and I bury it in you because you're unforgiven too." And there's really kind of a dark humor to that.
This episode's taking quite a dark turn right now.
Yeah. That song is really much darker and subtler than I had ever given it credit for. And so that was a real surprise.
One thing I'll say about Metallica in the 90s, I mean, really, it's only 3 studio albums and a dual compilation disc that came out. And of course, the Live Shit Binge and Purge box set and the S&M double disc, the live album. There is a lot of great material on the Black Album that I feel like is incredibly overlooked because it's not any of the singles. I mean, there's some great stuff on that. I would have to say the same thing about Load and Reload. I know a lot of my hardcore metal friends will say, "Oh, I got Metallica sold out, grunge, alternative, this and that." And I'm just like, have you listened to the songs? Yeah. I mean, I can remember Bleeding Me, Hit Me, that song, Outlaw Torn. Those songs hit me at a point in life when it was relevant to what was happening in my life at the time. I would have to say that maybe not as metal songwriters, but as songwriters in general, as lyricists, I mean, there's definite maturity there. I mean, James Hetfield at 30 is not the same James Hetfield at 19 years old.
No,
so you have to accept growth.
That's for sure. I mean, I had my ups and downs with them emotionally at that time too. And for me, part of it was just such a down time for metal at that point. Grunge had really sort of swept in. You have, Rob Halford leaving Judas Priest and doing his odd stuff. You have Bruce Dickinson out of Iron Maiden. And when the Load albums came out, I mean, you were really, speaking for myself, I was really hoping for someone to carry the metal torch, right? And so to get something that didn't sound as metal and certainly not as thrashy as we might want from Metallica, just felt like, oh, everybody's jumping ship on this. But in terms of the quality, I mean, the game is always played by people, make your own compilation of Load and Reload, right? I mean, certainly there are enough great songs there to make a great album.
Agreed.
There are some real high points and, some real low points, especially lyrically. Really great addiction songs on those 2 albums that are often overlooked as addiction songs, a topic that I cover in detail in the book. The House That Jack Built, Low Man's Lyric, Fixer. These are just great songs lyrically, very subtle. It's also, a couple of albums where you have some real duds lyrically in terms of things like 2x4 or Ain't My Bitch, that kind of thing. Really,
I like those songs. I'm not going to lie, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, they rock, but I mean, they're just not as sophisticated as some of the other songs.
I remember kids at my school, if they didn't want to do something, they're like, nah, it ain't my bitch. I'm like, oh, geez.
Yeah.
You know, though, it's funny because I was 15 going on 16 in 96. So I remember this like it was yesterday. Metallica releases Load. They have short hair. Everyone's like, oh my God, what have they done? And, you know, the first thing that you hear isn't Fight Fire with Fire, but it's Ain't My Bitch. And yeah, people freaked out about that. But I think the reason why I wasn't mad about it, because a lot of my friends were pissed about it, but I wasn't mad about it because I was like, you know, they already did that. Like Def Leppard already released Pyromania. Iron Maiden already released Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind. To me, it was like, you know, Metallica already released their trilogy of greatness, and you could pick whatever you want, whether it's Kill 'Em All to Master or Ride the Lightning to Injustice for All, depending on what you think. Even though 96 was not a great year for metal in the mainstream, if you dug deep into like what was being released independently on labels like Metal Blade or Roadrunner Records or, you know, what have you, you know, even Helloween, the band Helloween, my favorite album from them is Time of the Oath. That album came out in 96. Typo Negative had October Rust. Fear Factory released Demanufacture the year before. There was great metal that was out at the time, but, you know, mainstream publications, MTV, they didn't pay any attention to it because, you know, it didn't come in a flannel shirt.
No, that's absolutely right. Looking back on that time, I'm about 10 years older than you, right? So I'm 26, 27 when Load and Reload are coming out. And in a way, I was just too old to discover newer music. But there was, even the bands you mentioned are relatively mainstream. But in death metal and black metal, which I've just never really been able to get into myself, despite trying, I mean, there was great stuff going on at the time in those genres, but you just didn't know about it unless you were a hardcore fan seeking it out.
Agreed. And if you could read what the band names were with some of those black metal bands, you're lucky.
Right.
Is there a particular album from Metallica that you do prefer, either due to the music in general or just by the lyrics alone?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't have any surprising answers to that. Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets will always be my favorites, both in terms of music and lyrics and just what they were just so much a part of my life at that time. But like I said, I share your opinion on the Black Album. There are great songs, particularly the non-singles. I mean, I like the singles too, but songs like The God That Failed and The Struggle Within and Through the Never, all that stuff on the Black Album, and some real highlights on the Load albums.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that in hindsight, people could finally admit that those albums were great, or they had great moments on it. But, it's people's opinions, they change. But regardless, the fact that we're talking about it, it's an awesome thing.
I mentioned listener fatigue before with a song like Nothing Else Matters, right? But there's also style fatigue that you can get with a band like, AC/DC or Slayer, where it's so much the same repeatedly. And if it's style fatigue or listener fatigue for the fan, how much more so it has to be for the band performing, right? I mean, so part of Metallica's longevity is that they've kept it interesting for themselves.
Oh yeah, and then their last two albums of original output were incredible. I mean, I think Death Magnetic and Hardwired hold up with the 80s material, definitely. I mean, honestly, the only Metallica album I have a hard time listening to, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of fans feel this way, is Saint Anger. Just because, where are Kirk's solos? Why is the production so bad? I get it. At that point in their life, James had just come out of rehab. Everything is documented in some kind of monster. I will say this, to be talking with somebody who's in academia, especially in the realm of philosophy, is one thing, that we can have this conversation and we can have opinions on it and we could, dig deep into it. But I remember, if you ask me who the biggest villain was for Metallica or even of Metallica at the time, And I'm not going to say it was Lars. I actually agreed with him when it came to battling Napster over copyright. And I'm not going to say it was Jason for quitting. I'm not going to say it was James for going to rehab and setting set times that Metallica would work on the album. No, I would have to say it was Phil Toll.
You fucking suck!
Yeah. Forget Phil, right? Yeah. I mean, Saint Anger, it's funny, right? I mean, I've spoken to lots of fans trying to get input and have discussions and that sort of thing. And there are, as you're probably aware, Lou, there are fans for whom that's their favorite album. And
I've yet to meet one.
yeah, no, they are out there. And I mean, a lot of the time, it's like you spoke about the Load albums coming out when you're in high school. If Saint Anger came out when you were in high school and that was the first album from Metallica that you heard and you bought it with your own money and you played it 1,000 times, I can see how that happens. There's something really formative emotionally about those times. And
Timeline is everything.
Yeah. And some of those songs, for instance, Metallica is playing as we speak now some European shows, and they've added to the set list Dirty Window, which is actually a song with some really good lyrics, very self-reflective. Am I who I think I am? I drink from the cup of denial, judging the world from my throne. Nice connection there in a way with King Nothing, another sort of song of self-reflection that's in there. And they've done a good job, I think, with the acoustic and symphony versions of All Within My Hands. There are some things to listen to there. Although I agree with you, I find it hard to try to sit down and listen to the whole album all the way through. It just is sort of punishing in terms of its production and lack of solos, etc. But there are some gems even there to be plucked.
I'll have to give it another look, but yeah, all right. I mentioned that there's a lot of songs on the Black Album that I feel are overlooked. Which song would you say is probably their most overlooked?
Yeah, so in terms of a neglected song, maybe it's not quite as neglected anymore, but Fixer finally got a live performance at the 40th anniversary shows back in whenever that was, December, I think. And it's just a great song, an album closer. And it's a song that nicely illustrates something that Metallica has done very well. And that is, even when they seem to be treading on a cliche, they don't quite go there, right? So you could think of a song like of Wolf and Man, which could just turn into, I love Ozzy, don't get me wrong, but it could turn into Bark at the Moon, just basically a werewolf song. But of Wolf and Man is quite a bit more subtle than that. And likewise, to make another Ozzy connection, Fixer could have turned into just a Voodoo Dolls kind of song like Ozzy's Little Dolls. But it plays with issues of fate and free will, and it plays with the pins as symbolic of needles and addiction. And I think, and this is something I haven't written about in the book, but the more I've listened to Fixer, I think when you get to the end section with Shell of Shotgun and Pint of Gin and that whole verse, I think it's actually in some ways a reference to the witches scene in Macbeth and the famous phrase, something wicked this way comes, and the whole cauldron bubbling kind of thing. So that to me is a neglected and underappreciated song.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. Have you noticed student engagement and enrollment increasing for your classes because you've become the philosopher who dissects pop culture?
Well, there is some of that, I guess. I've been doing it for long enough that it's sort of taken for granted and maybe baked into my reputation as a teacher. And of course, I've not been able to fully keep up with the changing face of pop culture and whatever the students might be into. Some of my references get a little stale, maybe. And these days, quite frankly, I'm the age or older than most of their parents, and being a Metallica fan, I do get some metal fans and Metallica fans, but that's as likely to get the response of, "Oh, my dad likes them," as as it is I like them.
Funny story. So when Death Magnetic came out, I remember first day purchase and just listening to the album religiously, and they announced the tour. And around me, they were coming to the Nassau Coliseum, which where I live is not that far from my house, which is perfect because I could just drive there, park my car in, go and enjoy the concert. And this is in 2008. And my wife and her sisters are not metal fans at all. I think the hardest music my wife listens to is either, Def Leppard's Hysteria or Whitesnake's '87 release. So just to give everyone out there some context, and her sister Cassandra, who I love dearly, when Erin, my wife, when she purchased me a Metallica concert ticket for Christmas that year, the question Cassandra asked me was, "Is Metallica still relevant?" What? I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about? Still relevant?"
Yeah. No, that's right. And I mean, well, that in a way that kind of was a genuine question at the time, because that was the question I think that album answered. Are they still relevant? I mean, I think that was one of the great comeback albums of all time that showed that they were still relevant, that they could still do it, and people still should care.
Yeah, to quote Gene Simmons, they came for your girlfriend, your mother, and your sister. So, I would say yes.
Yeah.
What would you say has been the most rewarding part of your journey as an author?
Well, I mean, the most rewarding thing for me is just connecting with readers and listeners. So in the book, and I'll issue the invitation here as well, I give my email address and my Twitter handle in the book, and I'm always glad to hear from people who've read or have listened to a podcast. And so I think of a book as a conversation starter, as well as not a conversation ender, right? And so I'm not Stephen King, who can't respond to all of the contacts that he get. I tell people, you read the book or you hear me on a podcast, and you have something to say, you agree, you disagree, you like, you dislike, send me an email or DM me on Twitter, and I'll be glad to respond and glad to have a conversation. So that's what I find rewarding, because the book itself, it's nice to see it sitting there on the shelf, but it's really the interaction with the reader and with the listener.
Which leads me to my final question. If people want to find out more about you, Professor William Irwin, where can they find you on the internet? So please plug away.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. So just to remind people, the title of the current book is The Meaning of Metallica, Ride the Lyrics, right? And you can get that anywhere that you want to get a book. Big website that starts with an A, or another one that's initials B and N, or bookstore near you, or wherever. If you just Google my name, which is William Irwin, IRWIN, you'll come upon my webpage connected with my college, King's College in Pennsylvania. My name, William Irwin @kings.edu, is my email address. Feel free to email me. I'm @WilliamIrwin38 on Twitter. I don't do Twitter battles or anything like that, but I do respond to DMs. You can find out more about other publications that I've done on the website, or just Googling around, searching websites, etc. And I'm always glad to hear from people.
The Meaning of Metallica, Ride the Lyrics, available now through ECW Press. Thank you to Claire Pokorchak for setting this up. And I just want to say, Professor William Irwin, thank you so much for coming on to my little podcast and engaging me in a great conversation about, well, philosophy, Metallica, pop culture, and things that I've never even touched upon in this podcast before. You know, the fact that we can have a conversation about it and not be preachy or condescending or, you know, anything like that ilk has been a great opportunity and experience for me as a podcast host. And I'm just very grateful and appreciative for your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lou. Keep up the great work, and look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Thank you so much. If you want to find out more about the Music is Live podcast, check us out over at musicisLivepodcast.com. However, the site is currently going through changes, which means I haven't upgraded it yet. So go ahead and check out my link tree, which is Music is Live Podcast. And also don't forget to check out our parent network, ratsareview.com. Once again, Professor William Irwin, thanks again for coming by. And remember, all art is valid. Cheers. Music is Live podcast. Let me do it again. Sorry, I was in mid gulp. 3, 2, 1. Music is Live podcast. This is your host, Lou. Matt, calm down. You've done this a million times. You've done this a million times. And he's a professor, but you're not in class right now.
Oh my God. Don't let that intimidate you.
That'll be a great outtake. Anyway, okay. In 5, 4, 3.